Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. If people can switch the speakers off on their computers. Great, thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Julian Dean, Chair of the committee. Before we get going, a few housekeeping bits and pieces. We're not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the buildings behind you. In the event of the, I've just said that, I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Whilst we do our best to live stream meetings, there may be occasions when there are technical problems. If the live stream is halted for a technical reason, the meeting will be paused briefly to address the issue. If the issue persists and the live stream cannot be resumed, the meeting will continue even if it is no longer being transmitted live, and a backup recording will be published after the meeting. Can I also ask you to please ensure that mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure that members of this committee, can you not hear? There's not a lot I can do about that. Is there some? Oh, seems. No. Is there anything we can do to turn up the volume on the speakers? Okay, committee members, if you can draw your microphones close to you when you speak, is that better? Yes. Thank you. As I was saying, if there's a technical issue, if the stream cannot be resumed, the meeting will continue even if it is no longer being transmitted live, and a backup recording will be published. To ensure the members of this committee and all points raised by public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that it will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure that they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on an item if you have not heard all of the debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak so those listening know who is speaking? I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. Shall we start with Councillor Davis, please?
Councillor Andy Davis, St Oswald.
Councillor Rosemary Dartnell, Colham and Sutton.
Councillor Mark Owen, Oswestry South East.
Councillor Wendy Owen, Oswestry North.
Adam Pfeiffer, Morecambe, Shrewsbury.
Councillor Carl Rowley, St Martin's Western, Ellesmere Rural Villages.
Councillor Thomas Clayton, Sheffield North.
Councillor Gregory Ebbs, Whitchurch South.
Kelvin Hall, Principal Planning Officer.
Andrew Huntley, Senior Planner Officer.
Gemma Lawley, Developing Highways Manager.
Tabitha Lith, Planning and Development Services Manager.
Ollie Thomas, Principal Planning Officer.
Charlotte Morrison, Development Manager.
Joanne Thomas, Solicitor.
Tim Ward, Committee Officer.
Iqbal, Solicitor.
Thank you, and I've already introduced myself, Councillor Julian Dean. Do we have apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Brian Evans, substitute Councillor Clayton, thank you very much. Councillor Gary Grove, substitute Councillor Wendy Owen, thank you very much. And Councillor Ed Potter and Councillor Rosie Radford. No substitutes for those two. Item 2, to confirm minutes from the meeting held on the 17th of February 2026. Are there any issues with those minutes? Can I see a proposal for those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Davis. And a seconder, Councillor Dartnell, thank you. Does anybody wish to vote against or abstain? No, I'll take that as minutes accepted. Thank you very much. Item 4, disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded that they must declare their pecuniary interests and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting, as set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Further advice can be sought from the monitoring officer in advance of the meeting. Are there any disclosable? No, thank you. So we move on to the first planning application, item 5, proposed hotel east of the Shrewsbury Club, Sundorne Road, Shrewsbury. And so over to officers to take us through the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Ollie Thomas, I'll be presenting this one. Just a quick update to members in terms of the schedule of additional reps that was sent out last night. There was a typo error in that the legal advice was referenced to item 5. It's not in regard to item 5, it's in regard to item 8 and the Ellesmere Road application. There have been no additional reps in regard to item 5. So this application is in outline, including access and layout for a new hotel with associated parking and landscaping east of the Shrewsbury Club at Sundorne Road, Shrewsbury. Members will be aware of site and the surroundings from the site visit we undertook this morning, so I'll just run through a few of the plans and then briefly touch on the officer report. So red line boundary is shown on the screen now. We can see the Shrewsbury Club due south and then an area of residential to the west and north, and we've got the A49 creating the eastern boundary. Sundorne roundabout is directly north east, and the Featherbed Lane junction to the southwest. Similar plan, it's not in huge detail, I'm afraid, on the big screen, but similar plan here. It just shows the proposed layout of the new hotel building. Towards the west of the site, you can see it's an existing area of car parking as we saw today, but it will be slightly reconfigured to provide dedicated parking for the hotel building. The hotel building will then be a tiered building occupying what is an area of current woodland, albeit not of relatively high maturity or significance. The red line boundary also extends to the south and includes the existing parking for the Shrewsbury Club, and that's on the basis that that too will be reconfigured on the basis that the hotel building is across the current car parking arrangement. Although the application is in outline, layout is a matter for consideration. So an indicative floor plan has been submitted to show as to why the footprint of the building is as shown. The ground floor plan we can see is at the bottom of the screen, where we've got the blue and pink shading. Blue is front of house, pink is back of house. And then there will be a handful of beds on the ground floor. And then the plan above it is general arrangement of bedroom accommodation. It is suggested throughout the submission documents, and it's been assessed on the basis of it being a 4-storey building. So the indicative plan would indicate that the first, second and third floors would all follow a similar internal floor plan. This plan just shows the area for B&G. So as set out in the report, there will be a net loss on site. However, there are areas for new planting within site, but it will require the developer to secure off-site gains, which would be secured through a 106. And then also, as set out in the report, the transport assessment concluded that the Sundorne roundabout currently fails even in the do nothing scenario. So as part of the negotiation stage during this application, the local planning authority and highways authority have been working with the applicant to devise a potential highway mitigation scheme, which would look at improving capacity on the roundabout. The plan on screen is purely indicative. The contribution that the proportional contribution that this application would feed into would then trigger a full design and build process, but it's anticipated that it would include adding a secondary carriageway at the Sundorne roundabout to ease congestion during peak times. That's all the plans. So moving to the report, not a lot to update on this really. Technical consultees, none of them raise any objection. The only consultee that does request further information is our landscape consultant. However, it's not necessarily requesting additional information in regard to the technical assessment side of things. It's more so in regard to how the landscape and visual assessment was written. There are some fairly robust and detailed guidance on how to prepare an LVA, and it was deemed that it wasn't written in accordance with that guidance. However, I have addressed this in my report at 6.4.3, where I say that it's nonetheless acknowledged that the narrative assessment and overall judgment reached in relation to the nature and scale of effects are broadly reasonable. So it didn't feel reasonable or proportionate to go back and ask the applicant to amend the LVA in accordance with the guidance, because the outcome was still going to be the same. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one speaker, a local resident speaker against, Michael Hogg. Michael, if you'd like to come to this table. Thank you. So you'll have 3 minutes from when you begin. If you press the right hand button, the red light should come on. There we go. Okay, so over to you.
Chair and members of the committee, I have 5 key concerns. First, the need and location. It's not clear why another hotel is required in Shrewsbury. Travelodge has been approved next to Rowley's house, and there is potential for a hotel within the Riverside redevelopment. Even if capacity is justified, it's hard to see why it should be in a predominantly residential area when more suitable commercial land exists nearby. Second, the application does not reflect the full situation on the site. The revised plans mentioned in the DMR do not reveal the £11 million transformation, including outdoor leisure facilities that have been constructed without approval, which affect the parking and traffic situation. As a result, many of the reports and surveys in this application do not fully reflect the combined impacts on these issues. Third, traffic congestion is already a major problem. On the 11th of April, at about 9 o'clock, I witnessed gridlock on Sundorne Road and Featherbed Lane roundabout. Traffic was at a standstill from both A49 and town directions. Roundabout was clogged and traffic on Featherbed Lane couldn't turn right. This was caused by too many vehicles trying to enter the club for an event. A hotel would clearly add to this pressure. Also, a member of the club has told me that parking is already hard on the site. Fourth, there's uncertainty about future developments on this site. There's been an EIA screening opinion request for the potential construction of 72 houses on the land to the south of the club, where access would cross the same parking and entrance areas of the club that the hotel would try to use. The committee should be clear on whether potential housing access or an oversized hotel would be a better use, as the two projects appear incompatible on this site. Finally, the scale and impact of the building. The proposed 4-storey hotel would replace an area of mature trees screening the site and would be significantly out of character with the surrounding residential area. To visualise the scale, members need only to picture the height of the 4-storey A&E building at the RSH, placed next to 2-storey houses, to see that this would be an overbearing development. For these reasons, I ask the committee to defer this application and require a revised proposal that properly considers the combined impacts of the developments on this site and the surrounding residential community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any committee members have any questions or clarification? No, thank you very much. Any comments at this stage from officers? Okay, so we have a speaker for the agent is Ian Kilby. Thank you, Ian. I think you're familiar with the rules.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Proposal for a hotel represents a positive opportunity to strengthen Shrewsbury's visitor economy, enhance local employment and make productive use of land in a manner consistent with both the local plan and the aspirations of the Big Town Plan. The application supports the Council's strategic objectives, sustainable economic growth, and the adopted core strategy policies CS3, CS13 encourage development that reinforces Shrewsbury's role as the county's primary centre and promotes high quality tourism, leisure and cultural facilities. The proposal directly responds to this by delivering a use that attracts visitors, increases dwell time and supports local businesses. It also aligns with the Council's economic growth strategy, which identifies tourism as a key sector for future expansion. The application is supportive of the sequential assessment, which demonstrates that there were no sequentially preferable, suitable or available sites in the town centre or edge of centre capable of accommodating the proposal. Its co-location with the David Lloyd Shrewsbury Club site is a key factor, reducing reliance on private cars for event attendees and directly supporting an established sporting venue with a national profile. Concerns had been raised regarding traffic and highways impact, as your officers have reported. The submitted transport assessment shows that the development can be safely accommodated within the existing network, and a financial contribution of £130,000 is offered in respect of future off-site works, this figure being calculated as a proportionate response to those works required. The site benefits from good connectivity, and the proposal encourages sustainable travel in line with Council Policy CS6 and the MPPF. It's also worth noting that visitor-based uses typically generate traffic outside peak commuting hours, reducing the pressure on the network. Furthermore, and highlighted from paragraph 6.5.7 of your officer report, the supporting framework travel plan confirms that the site is well served by passenger transport, and it's also close to Route 81 cycle route. The officer report acknowledges that the outline nature of the application, and this allows the council to secure high quality design, sensitive landscaping and appropriate screening at the reserve matters stage. Furthermore, there is established landscaping outside the south boundary which is unaffected by the proposal. The southern side of this part of Sundorne Road is a mixed use location. There are some residential properties at the entrance to the site and opposite, but the road is primarily characterised by sports, leisure and medical uses. The council's strategic policy objectives emphasise the need to diversify the town's economic base and strengthen its attractiveness as a regional destination, and the proposal does exactly that. So I'd ask you respectfully, committee, to support the officer recommendation and approve the application.
Thank you very much. Committee members, any questions, clarification? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Officers, any more points at this stage? No. Okay, so we open it up to committee for debate. Who'd like to go first? I just had two speakers. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Don.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for that information. I have questions about traffic. Mr. Hogg referred to an event at the David Lloyd Club, and which caused chaos on the surrounding roads. And the report speaks about the A49 junction, but it's not the A49 alone that is a problem there. It's Sundorne Road itself and also Featherbed Lane, which are prone to very bad traffic jams. There's a school just around the corner, and I would have concerns about what this would add to that situation. I'm worried about parking as well, being whether that's sufficient for both the sports centre and the hotel. Worried about it being a 4-storey building in what is a residential area, technically in countryside, but on the very edge of town. And I'm also concerned about very limited public transport and active travel network there. It's true there is a path nearby, but to actually get there, you don't need a path. It's like having one road somewhere. People don't have to come from one place to get to, place A to place B. They come from wherever they come from, so a network is needed. So I have concerns about all of those things, and they really are, I suppose it's about, they all relate to a hotel in a place that one wouldn't necessarily expect a hotel to be positioned in terms of the way our transport is set up.
Thank you. Officers, do you wish to respond to any of those points at this stage? Because I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment.
Sorry, Tim. Were there any questions in there? Or?
Sorry. So the question is, what would we do to mitigate those things with this? If this development were to go ahead, we've talked about mitigations for the A49 and the junction into Sundorne Road, but what about the rest of Sundorne Road, the first mini roundabout with Featherbed Lane, which is bad already, the school just on the opposite side of Featherbed Lane. So the question is, what would we do to mitigate that? The question is, what would we do about sufficient parking for both the sports centre and for the hotel? I would object to the overbearing nature of the building at 4 stories, so you may or may not want to comment on that. And I have concerns about public transport and active travel not really providing a network to make it a sort of a place that one could use without a personal car.
Okay. We've got our highways officer with us today who I'll just respond to a couple of the other non-transporty points. I think Gemma will pick up on the transport assessment in regards to other road networks as it instead of just the A49, but the parking provision is set out at 6.5.6, which does demonstrate that the local planning authority, the officers and highways authority are satisfied with the level of parking numbers provided. Scale, I think the 4-storey nature of it, from the site visit this morning, we were able to appreciate the separation distances between the proposed location of the hotel building and the nearest residential neighbours to the site, and we were able to experience the presence of the road intervening. There will be a retention of boundary vegetation, which provide a degree of screening. And 4 stories I don't think would look out of character when read against the existing backdrop of the Shrewsbury Club. I think as it was, set out by the planning agent, it is a very much mixed use area, and I think that a 4-story building is quite respective of that mixed use nature. The landscape and visual assessment doesn't conclude there'd be any major adverse impacts in terms of the scale. Gemma, are you okay to pick up on?
Yeah, absolutely. So in relation to the likely impact, the extensive modelling has been undertaken by the applicant, and then a further summary notes been submitted as well. So there's been an assessment of the 2 roundabout junctions, and the outcome of that modelling does indicate that even without the development, both junctions would be over theoretical capacity or close to theoretical capacity on the majority of arms. So I think it's fair to say that as a highway authority, then we need to do an assessment on the whole of the network in terms of kind of interventions. As Ollie's sort of pointed out, there is a contribution towards kind of mitigating the impact of this development specifically. In regard to the likely impact on Featherbed Lane, as part of the modelling, they do a kind of a distribution, and it's the assumptions being made that only 3.5% of the development traffic would route along Featherbed Lane in that respect. So acknowledge the fact that there is the primary school, but I think you have to look at the likely impact of this development on itself, really. So at the moment, we're only seeking the contribution towards the roundabouts and mitigating that impact at this stage.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anything on public transport?
Yeah, so in terms of the active travel kind of element of this site, I think that there would be an assumption within the modelling. They've looked at sort of typical kind of hotel and what the likely trip rates would be for the site. I think in this particular case, we'd look at the kind of the overlap between the two of this kind of sports facility and the hotel as well. And yeah, kind of looking at the corridor sort of down to Sundorne Road as a wider aspect. In terms of there is the cycle route to the south of the site, but the access to that isn't direct from this site itself. So I don't know if there's any specific questions in regard to the active travel, or whether it's just a general concern.
Well, it is a general concern, but I think if we're adding a facility like a hotel with a lot of guests in it, but it would be good if it was actually linked to the network, to the active travel network. That ought to be possible.
I think we have. So the hotel building is submitted not completely on the basis of co-location, but strongly on the basis of co-location. So there is an expectation that the Shrewsbury Club is nationally renowned for the competitions it holds and attracts competitors and spectators to the events it holds. So there's a natural suggestion that guests during events would be people attending the Shrewsbury Club. So there's a co-location aspect to it there. There are existing active travel provisions along Sundawn Road, and this site has easy access to Sundawn Road. There is a condition that the applicants are required to provide the council with a travel plan, and that would set out how we would look at promoting sustainable modes of transport, but we didn't feel on this occasion it was reasonable to seek any further contributions or commitments in regard to active travel.
Okay. Councillor Rowley?
Councillor Rowley, just to try and get representation of the parking, how many parking spaces are currently allowed, do you know?
If you just bear with me a minute or so, I can find that out.
Whilst he's looking that up, Councillor Rowley, were there other points you wanted to make?
No, all it was like we can see the provision of 260 for the club and then 52 spaces for the hotel. Obviously, those are on the site visit this morning. We could see there was a little bit of a parking issue. I just wanted to see how many is there at the moment, really, and then we can get a good representation of what the situation will be.
Okay, they're still looking that up, so I'll move on to Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm encouraged to find that the developers are actually working with sort of highways, particularly on that roundabout, for many, many years, even before the Welty was originally put there. That junction has always been a gridlock, so any solution to improve that sort of roundabout, which you've been suggesting, I think is certainly welcome. I do appreciate the concerns regarding the 4-storey. When we were there this morning, we could see it's divided by the road. There's some distance between where it's going to be. Lots of the greenery is going to be kept as and when, and other trees will be planted. So I think that's encouraging. I think that's really important to look at that. Being sort of a leading sports venue and the idea of actually people going there to stay active, having an active way of actually going from there to Shrewsbury might be quite a good suggestion to look at as well, to work with developers, to link to local footpaths and so forth. Has that been explored at all? Do they want to promote sort of health and well-being and sort of fitness and walking and cycling?
It's been explored in the sense that we have obviously considered the active travel routes from the site, because we have acknowledged that there is a public service that would connect to the town centre and beyond. We're aware, it's highlighted that there is a cycling network in the locality, and it's also recognised that within easy walking distance from the site there are a significant amount of service facilities that could support hotel visiting guests, local convenience, food outlets, all within 2 kilometre easy walk. So as kind of reiterating the previous point, I think on this occasion we felt it wasn't reasonable to push active travel any further, because the site is relatively well considered in active travel issues as it is.
Are we any closer to an answer?
I can't actually find the existing parking provision, unfortunately. I can only find the proposed.
Okay. Councillor Ebbs, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. More the point of clarification. Obviously, with this is a proposed outline development for the hotel, and there will be a loss in biodiversity as a consequence of constructing the hotel. But because it's outlined, am I correct to say that officers would be looking at the biodiversity loss and potentially the privacy concerns raised by members of the public at a later stage in detail?
Yes, thank you. So in regards to BNG, biodiversity net gain, the mandatory requirement is kind of captured post-planning, so it's a condition that's automatically applied to any approval decision that the council issues. However, we as Shropshire Council like to front load BNG information, so we're at least aware of how 10% could be achieved, because what we're trying to circumvent is the need for applicants to come back to planning if they're not able to deliver it on site, even though it was approved at application stage. However, in this occasion, the applicant has already acknowledged they cannot deliver it on site. So they will do as much as they can on site, but there is a requirement that they will have to go off site to get to that 10% gain requirement. That will be secured through a 106. We will have a level of detail at reserve matters stage, but because it's captured through the biodiversity gain plan condition, which is a pre-commencement, it's not until we get into the discharge of condition stage that we know full details in terms of where any offsite gains will be, or what the on-site gains would look like. But it's not something the council impose. It's a mandated condition on all decision notices. As to the amenity issues, yes, you're quite right. I think scale is not up for consideration. However, it is acknowledged that most of the assessment work has been based on a 4-storey building, hence the planning condition appended at Appendix 1, which says a maximum of up to 4 storeys. That's as far as we can go in limiting any matters of scale at this outline stage. However, we do have to still nonetheless consider it within our decision making, because we've got to be certain that the quantum and use of development can be achieved at reserve matters stage. I think here, referring back to the points I made to Councillor Dartnell, is we were able to appreciate on site the proximity of neighbouring residential development from where the hotel building is going to be located. We were aware of the existing vegetation, which the boundary perimeter edge will be retained. So officers are confident that scale, appearance, design can all be satisfactorily dealt with at reserve matters stage without having any harmful impact on residential amenity.
Can I follow through with that, Chair?
Yes.
I would just sort of like to outline my thinking process from the current debate. From what I've heard from officers and from the questions posed by councillors, I'm hinting more in favour of approving this planning application, because I believe the proximity of the application to the local bus stop, which is something which has been previously mentioned, is distance to the local travel plans, and also the fact that when it comes to privacy, this will be dealt with at a reserve matter stage later by officers, and therefore privy to further discussion, along with further conversations off-site. Biodiversity net gains means that I can't see sufficient reason to oppose this application. I actually think the benefit of providing the local community is more in favour. So that's where I'm currently pivoting as it stands.
Thank you. Would you like to make that a proposal as such?
I'm happy to make that as a proposal.
Is there a seconder for that proposal? So Rowley, thank you. Okay, so we have a proposal on the table. I'm not closing the debate at this stage, but just so we're aware, we have a proposal to accept the recommendation. I have my name next on the list, so just a couple of comments from me. So that roundabout is in need of help. It seems that perhaps it's an odd way of going about it, but that the development of the hotel on that site would enable that to at least begin. It wouldn't bring all the money we need to spend on that site, but it would enable some contribution towards that, as I understand it, and in particular a contribution which would allow the design work to be done. So that's in my mind. I think it's a shame that we haven't explored active travel more actively. I think the link through to the cycle route back into town could have been explored, and possibly there could have been a contribution towards that. It's a shame that hasn't been made. Perhaps it's something the hotel developers would like to consider, even making some hireable bikes available for people to get into the town centre from the hotel. It's actually a lovely route along the side of the canal. It might be quite an attractive thing for the hotel if they were to consider that, but it's a shame that we haven't put that in. But perhaps we can smuggle that into the travel plan. I'm not convinced that the height is an issue, having visited this morning. So at the moment, I'm minded to probably support Councillor Ebb's proposal. Any other speakers? Yeah, Excellent.
Councillor Margoin. Yeah, I can see the pluses. The hotel will certainly be a place to stop where with the facilities locally, the facilities of the sports area, as well as the sports village further down the road. So in that regard, I view it as a plus. What I view as a negative, and it's always the case with me, whenever I look at developments, whether they be residential or in this case a more commercial development, there's never enough parking. I'm concerned about the parking as well. As we saw this morning, it was very well used, which is great for the facilities there at the moment. But adding cars from a stay, even with reorganisation of the car park, I'm wondering how much congestion there will be coming from it. It's not enough to change my mind in the way I'm leaning in terms of the actual application, but every time I see these developments, there's never enough parking. So that's the negative in my mind. The pluses for the tourism, great, I don't mind that.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers? In which case, yes. Oh, yes, officers.
So I think we found the existing number of car parking spaces set out in the transport assessment, which would say it was 210. So there will be an increase. And just to touch on kind of the parking provision, I think as within the submission document provided by the applicant, there is an expression of interest as to who the end operator would be of this hotel, and it would be part of the Hilton Group. And I think we can be pretty rest assured that, you know, they have a tried and tested model in terms of operating hotels, and we have to take the understanding that they're putting forward a proposal which they know they can run successfully. The last thing we'd want is for a hotel building to just sit there vacant. So I think we can be somewhat rest assured that with a name like Hilton attached to it, the parking provision, the layout and arrangement of the building is all set up to work with their model of operating hotel businesses in locations like this.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's possible to make an amendment to Councillor Ebb's proposal to say that I don't know if this is okay to do or not, so do tell me if it is, but to say that we should be considering the Shrewsbury Movement of Public Open Space Strategy, which I note in the report says it mainly focuses on the town centre, but it is actually a whole town strategy, a whole town master plan. I agree that it is focused mainly on the town centre, but it is intended to make changes to the way we live and travel and park and so on and so forth. So I'm just hoping that we could maybe make an amendment to that proposal and suggest that we accept this application, but with a requirement to look at active travel being more deliberately included in the plans as a facility, much as you just said, Councillor Dean.
So we'll get some advice, but from what my understanding is that the only way we could get that in is to ask for specific reference to it within the travel plan. Would there be any other way for us to strengthen the active travel provisions?
No, I think that would be it. If we're looking at any off-site active travel improvements, it would have to be either secured, well, it would have to be secured through the 106 if we're expecting the developer to contribute to it. However, if it's to be incorporated into the 106, it has to meet the tests for requiring that contribution. The recommendation to members today would suggest that requirement would not be met, because we're able to recommend a scheme for approval without that contribution. So there would be question marks over whether we could justify a standalone financial contribution or improvement contribution within the 106. However, I think we can certainly tell the applicants that they will have to consider active travel through the travel plan, and that will set out how they will promote sustainable modes of travel, and that will have to come to the council, to the local planning authority for approval prior to them becoming operational. So we will have final say on how good their active travel measures are. It's just that if through the travel plan they will be relying on existing provision off-site. They can do stuff on-site, perhaps such as offering bikes for rent and so on. But if it's anything off-site infrastructure-wise, they'll be using the existing provision in and around the sites and the wider Shrewsbury area.
Councillor Dartmoor, I know it's not great, but are you happy
Yeah,
to?
I just really want to, just put a line in the sand a little bit wherever possible about this strategy. It's a strategy that's been adopted by Shropshire Council, and it's an ambition. It's a master plan, but at some point you can't just keep saying it's kind of there in the future. We have to be moving towards it, and that's really what my concern is. So if we're developing a new hotel a mile or so from the centre of town, it's a perfect opportunity to take on the movement strategies principles.
Having said that, and I agree with you, but are you satisfied that we have given that strong signal and we want to see that prominent in the travel plan?
Yes, I am.
So subject to that addition, I plan to move this to a vote. And we did have a seconder. It was Councillor Ravi. Oh, the amendment. I'll second the amendment. So, yeah. Okay. So subject. I'm assuming you accept the amendment. Yeah. Yeah. So based on that, we'll put that proposal to the vote.
So we have a proposal to approve the planning application subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report, plus consideration in respect of active travel.
Yeah, sorry.
The amendment for active travel.
I think. Sorry, can I just I think the amendment. If you're wanting to make a decision on the amendment, I would suggest that the amendment would be that condition 8 is amended to directly specify the Shrewsbury Move strategy. Because condition 8 is the condition that requires the applicant to submit a travel plan. I'm sure we can put some wording in there to make reference to the Shrewsbury Move strategy.
Thank you, officers. That clarifies it. Yeah, are we happy with that?
Yeah, so we have a proposal to approve the planning application subject to conditions set out in the officer's report, subject to the condition 8 amendment to specifically include the Shrewsbury Moves amendment. Take it to vote then. So if you could tell me whether you are for, against, or wish to abstain. So Thomas Clayton.
For.
Andy Davis. For. Rosemary Dartnell.
For.
Gregory Ebbs.
For.
Adam Pfeiffer.
For.
Mark Owen.
For.
Wendy Owen. For. Carl Rowley.
For.
Eugene Dean.
For.
That's everyone for.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, committee. We move on to the next item. It's now 2:45. I propose to take this item and then to have a comfort break after this one, and then we'll have 2 further items after this one. So the next item is what number we're on? It's the Bowmere Heath, isn't it? Land to the east of Merrington Road, Bowmere Heath. So over to officers to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Huntley, Senior Planning Officer. Good afternoon, councillors. The application before you today is an outline planning application for up to 98 dwellings. As the Chair said, and you saw the site this morning, it is just to the north of Bowmere Heath on the east side of Merrington Road. With this outline application, all matters are reserved apart from the means of access. Just for your clarification, councillors, through the case officer's negotiations with the applicant, you can see the initial red line site plan on the left on your screen. This has been slightly amended on the northern edge just to simplify that boundary. So it is a slightly smaller red line site than was initially included. Can we have the next slide, please? Right, this is a parameters plan. So the area to the north in blue, this area is for drainage and the sustainable urban drainage system only. The land to the south, that's in that lovely mustard colour, is where the actual physical dwellings would be located. As I said, all matters are reserved
but they have submitted initially. You can see it's slightly based on the initial outline site plan, but they have provided an indicative sort of layout for where development will go within the site. As I said, that is a reserve matters that will come back in if this outline was approved. Please hold me. Right, this is the new access onto Meriton Road, and this does form part of the consideration within this outline application. And as you can see, it's a new access, and highways have no objection to it. On the next slide, unfortunately, this hasn't come out very well on the screen, but this does show you the highways improvements the applicant is proposing, and that includes a new footway, cycleway, new bus shelter. And that's really all I have at the moment, Chair.
Thank you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers. Our first speaker is a speaker against, David Cookson. Thank you, David. So if you press the right hand button, if the red light comes on, you have 3 minutes from when you begin.
David Cookson, Bomey Heath resident, the last 84 years and 2 days. In May last year, we had the first indication of this application via a card from Wayne Estates, inviting people to send in a comment on their project. At this point, you could also access information on their website, and it was then that we discovered in horror that the initial plan was to build up to 100 homes, but it was actually just the initial phase, with the possibility of a following phase taking the total up to 325 homes. You will note from your copy of the Development Management Report that this was also picked up by the Parish Council, referenced 4.2, and is also in the summary of points from the public comments, 54, reference 423. It is significant that since the outline application for 98 homes has been submitted, the link to their website and this extra information has been removed. But the illustration on their project list still shows up to 100 homes on this 49-acre site, i.e. the whole of that very large field, not just the area marked out on the plan and the aerial view. The other point I would like to comment on is the phrase on the application, all matters reserved except for access. I'm not sure if the committee have had the chance to visit the site, but you would have seen that the site access point, the gap between the 2 blocks of houses, is at present obstructed by 3 poles carrying relay equipment and is part of a line of 3 electricity cables stretching from the opposite side of the road and transversing the whole site eastwards. The delivery management report states that the whole line of cables will have to be diverted or placed underground. I envisage this to be a complex and expensive operation. In your management report, the summary from the 54 public comments shows a long list of reasons why this application is totally unacceptable. It is not only on the wrong side of the village, it is wrong for the village. I fully expect there to be other developments being applied for in the future, but hopefully they will be from the less disruptive southern area of the village. I respectfully urge the committee to vote certainly against this application. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any questions or clarification? Thank you very much. The officer points at this stage?
Not at this stage, Chair.
Thank you. So our second speaker is Councillor Dan Harmer, Chair of Bomey Heath Parish Council, I believe. Dan, you also have 3 minutes from when you press the button, or when you begin.
Thank you. As the chair of Birmingham Heath Parish Council, I represent my community, following on from 52 objections to this application. We understand the need for growth, but we must add that in context, you may have seen the 2 current developments being built on site right now, totaling 78 homes. This application makes 176 homes, which is an overall increase of 30%. Respectfully, the officer's report recommends granting the approval, but the decision is premature because the key impacts haven't been fully assessed. We raised foul sewage capacity as a material concern. Existing drainage problems, Severn Trent has not responded, so cannot be deemed to have been consulted. WSP consent, but emphasise the capacity of the downstream culverts must be assessed. The FRA indicates the existing water logging, known surface water issues, and unknown drainage connectivity. The case officer's recommendation says nothing about the capacity of the existing foul sewer network. Adding 98 homes to a system that's already under pressure without that assessment is contrary to the NPPF and Shropshire Council's own core strategy, CS18. Cumulative housing impact, the presumption of the sustainable development in paragraph 11 means that for the committee to approve, adverse impacts must not outweigh the benefits, and I ask the committee to assess these impacts now. The report acknowledges the 30% growth, but it does not assess what that means in practice. Add 78 homes that are still under construction, their impacts haven't been fully experienced yet. Without assessing the combined impact, the planning balance required under MPPF paragraph 11 cannot properly be reached. Furthermore, Birmingham Heath's affordable housing requirements is 31. The report fails to highlight that 28 of those houses are currently under construction in the previous 2 schemes. Our concerns are that this is one of a much larger scheme, as referenced by David from the village. The report should have directed you to the potential for future development. So the pre-app was for 150 homes. The website did quote 325 houses, and we have had confirmation from the developer that they do have an option on the wider field. You are being asked to approve this draft without draft section 106 agreement. This means that key mitigations have not been defined and those decisions are delegated after approval rather than the committee considering it today, and that's not proper oversight. Our village is not opposed to growth, but it must be properly planned, and the parish council objects to this application, and we ask that you refuse or defer until the drainage and section 106 matters are resolved. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification from the committee? Yes, Councillor Fife.
I have a very quick question because in number of the time you mentioned draining problems.
Yes.
This existing problem already.
Existing already.
Did you try to contact with the Severn Trent?
It's not my role to contact Severn Trent, but Severn Trent and the Environmental Agency are aware, should that be useful, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any officer comments at this stage? No, thank you. We'll move on to Councillor Brendan Mallon. And you have 5 minutes from the beginning.
Thank you, Chair. Committee. This application represents a drastic overdevelopment of the village that is already absorbing significant and ongoing development. As I speak, 78 new houses are already under construction and yet to be occupied in Beaumere Heath, including no less than 28 affordable homes, just 3 short of Beaumere Heath's allocated requirement to build 31. Considering these 78 houses in combination with the now proposed 98, this represents a 30% increase in the number of houses in Beaumere Heath in a very short period of time. This is a staggering and profound change that no small community should have to endure. It is also of note that the application site is outside Beaumere Heath's SAMDEV boundary, further emphasising that this development is beyond the practical capacity of this village. Such a drastic change being imposed would be unacceptable in a location graced with sufficient services, infrastructure and connectivity to absorb hundreds of new residents. Sadly, this is not the case in Beaumere Heath and its surrounds. As with other applications for large developments in and around North Shrewsbury, the jobs, school places, GP provision highways capacity, active travel possibilities and adequate public transport links are already overstretched. The modest SIL allocation will only provide marginal increases in capacity for Clive and Basters GP surgeries, which Beaumere Heath residents will have to reach by private motor transport. All of our local schools are beyond capacity, and the inadequate SIL allocation for school places is not tied to the local area and doesn't guarantee any additional provision locally. Additional residents will have to live their day-to-day lives well away from Beaumere Heath. This will add significant strain to a road network that is already heavily congested at rush hour, with over 1,000 proposed new homes in nearby developments, with no relief from the now officially cancelled North West Relief Route, and the impending closure of Shrewsbury Town Centre through routes under the Big Town Plan, providing a future shock to residents of these areas around North Shrewsbury who must commute through and around the town. While the plan adds bus stops, it does not add any additional bus services to a local network that is already inadequate. As for active travel, anyone familiar with the twisty, undulating road with no footpath between Knights Way and Beaumere Heath knows that any thought of cycling or walking into Shrewsbury is a non-starter. NPPF 2024 clearly constrains such irresponsible overdevelopment. Paragraph 110 states that, quote, significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable through limiting the need to travel and offering a genuine choice of transport modes. Living in Beaumere Heath already entails a need to travel that will only be compounded with a very limited choice of transport modes. Paragraph 116 goes on to say that development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe, taking into account, and I'll stress this, all reasonable future scenarios. Clearly, the proposed Battlefield and Ellesmere Road developments and the Big Town Plan are reasonable future scenarios within the meaning of this requirement. Also from the NPPF, paragraph 129 part C gives us this clause. Planning policies and decisions should support development that makes efficient use of land, taking into account the availability and capacity of infrastructure and services, both existing and proposed, as well as their potential for further improvement and the scope to promote sustainable travel modes that limit future car use. This proposal, in fact, guarantees increased future car use, and accompanying nearby developments, including new houses and Big Town Plan road closures, are just going to increase stresses on infrastructure and services. The NPPF is the same document that invokes the application of the tilted balance to push through applications that would have been deemed unsuitable previously. However, it is a tilted balance, not a lying on its back completely submissive balance. There is still a great deal of balance to be had, and clauses such as those I have mentioned are already incorporated in the NPPF to ensure a degree of balance is retained. When addressing the tilted balance in Section 7 of the Development Plan report, it is stated misleadingly that there is a lack of a 5-year housing land supply, when in fact we are less than 10% short of that central government imposed arbitrary target at 4.6 years. We're talking about hundreds, not thousands of houses to be found across Shropshire, not just crammed in the North Shrewsbury and adjacent villages. Section 7 also acknowledges that tilted balance means sustainable development, yet doesn't mention the actual NPPF meaning of sustainability, which I have highlighted. The tilted balance should be applied here and elsewhere in the true spirit it was intended, tempered by the considerations mentioned, and not wielded as a blanket presumption of approval. On that basis, I urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification? No? Thank you. Okay. And our final speaker is the agent, Laurie Lane. Thank you, and you have 3 minutes from when you begin. Right hand, that's it.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Committee. Beaumere Heath is a sustainable and vibrant village, and it's designated a community hub in the local plan. The officer report confirms that Beaumere has a variety of facilities that make it a sustainable location for development. Importantly, the settlement to satellite of Shrewsbury, and then the number 576 bus service means one can live there and travel to Shrewsbury for work, leisure or onward travel in under 20 minutes. These points have been confirmed by officers not just on this application, but also in the report for the nearby site, also at Merrington Road, just over a year ago. Members will be aware that the adopted plan became time expired last month, and the new local plan won't be adopted until 2029 at the earliest. Until a new plan is adopted, and in the light of the 5-year housing land supply deficit, Bowmere Heath is a location that can and should continue to grow to meet pressing housing needs. A significant added benefit of this scheme is it will provide 5% affordable housing above the existing 10% local plan requirement. The housing officer has confirmed there's a high number of people on the affordable housing waiting list, with a preference for Bowmere, who are currently unable to find a home there. Since the submission of the application back in September, we've worked with officers to resolve a range of issues to their satisfaction. All statutory consultees, including your professional highways, archaeology, ecology and drainage officers, have confirmed that all technical matters are or can be resolved through the use of standard planning conditions or developer contributions, including education and healthcare. The officer report notes the proposal will reinstate historic hedgerow boundaries so it can be assimilated into the landscape. The council's landscape consultant confirmed there was no objection to the original proposal. However, in response to the request from the planning officer for a more regular northern site boundary, we've agreed minor changes, and the parameters plan will be conditioned, which secures the extent of built form. These changes reduce the site by just 0.1 hectare, or about 3 plots. And so it does not warrant a change at this point to the description of development for up to 98 homes. The exact number of dwellings, with the absolute maximum being 98, will be determined through the reserved matters application. So just to summarise, and as confirmed by the planning inspector when recently allowing an appeal for 75 homes in the lower tier community cluster settlement of Tilstock, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies. There's no matters relating to footnote 7 of the MPPF, which would disapply that presumption. We'd like to endorse your professional officer's findings that any planning harms identified do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the substantial benefits of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification? No, thank you very much. Any officer comments? Thank you. Okay, opening it up to committee members. Yes, Councillor Davis.
Just one question regarding the information on the portal, please. This is regarding WSP. They've requested that the downstream culverts to be assessed. However, there's a report from Roxburgh who are refusing to carry out to do this. Is there a comment about that, please?
Bear with me, Councillor.
Whilst the officer's looking that up, can just see who else wishes to speak. Councillor Ebbs, Councillor Pfeiffer. Yeah, don't worry, I'm coming back to you.
Shall I carry on in the meantime?
If you have other points, yeah, yes, please.
One or two.
Except for the, perhaps it's just give the, because we, because Andrew is leading on this application, perhaps we need to let him hear the rest of your points as well, whilst he's looking something up. So just wait a minute.
It's one or the other, I'm afraid.
Me to answer that, Councillor, is this will come in at reserve matter stage. So it will be down to the applicant to show that they can achieve what they need to achieve and what our drainage experts say.
So even though they've said categorically they're not prepared to do it, will you follow that up?
As I said, that will be part of the reserve matters deliberations. So if they cannot achieve a satisfactory outcome, then they will not receive an approval at reserve matters stage until they can.
Sure. Okay, thank you. You know, we visited the site. I'm concerned it is outside the development boundary for a start to the village. It's the actual development is on quite a steep sort of incline. Even though it's only a flood zone 1, having knowledge around issues of flooding around Brick Road and Pool Meadow, this would be a concern. So I would like to see sort of a detailed sort of report carried out. The location of Bowmere Heath, it has very limited bus services. Once an hour, but 6 o'clock it then stops. Cycling from Bowmere Heath, we're looking at active travel, cycling from Bowmere Heath to Shrewsbury along Heffley Lane is not the best idea in the world. It's not a very suitable road for that. So I think in some ways Bowmere Heath is quite remote, especially if we're looking at more affordable housing as well. How are those residents going to get into town on quite a limited service? No real question, it's just my points really. Learning and skills, I'm disappointed with. They've identified the cost for pupils with SEND should they require to travel to a school, which I think is fine. The fact that they have not considered, should Bowmere Heath be oversubscribed, the additional cost for local authority of sending those children on school transport to a school perhaps in Middle or Bastchurch or even in the town, that has not been noted by learning and skills. My final point really is with the number of homes, Bowmere Heath's increasing by 1/3 with all this new development. That is going to be a substantial impact on the village of Bowmere Heath. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ebbs?
Can I come back to this? I need to think a bit more about my questions.
Sure thing. Councillor Pfeiffer?
Thank you. To be fair, it's like a number of the time we had a problem with the drainage, and I wonder if it was any, let's say, data or study done about how the new houses, which is already in develop, and that new plan will affect of the drainage system, and if it was any propose how to resolve that problem.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just reinforce that point actually, just in terms of the cumulative impact. What powers do we have as a council to ensure that the cumulative impact is taken into account, and would it be appropriate either at this stage or at full application stage to be imposing granting conditions around the suitable infrastructure being in place before people move in? Those are my questions.
In terms of undertaking a granting condition, you would have to really justify it on planning terms, and it would have to meet the tests. You know, isn't it reasonable? Is it related to this specific development? So when you're talking about cumulative, we're not talking about just this development. So would it meet the tests? And the answer is probably not.
And would those tests be at this stage, or would they be at the full application stage?
Obviously, as this is an outline application, the only things we're looking at today, members, is the principle of development and the acceptability of the access. All the other issues will be considered at reserved matters stage.
Okay, thanks for clarification. Councillor Rowley.
Councillor Rowley, I just want to get some clarification. So we're at the outline planning application stage. I look at the illustration on the screen there. What I'm not seeing is what it might look like. You know, what will 98 houses look like on that piece of land? All I see is a couple of roads and that. Now, we've seen plenty of outline plan applications before, and we do see those illustrations. I'm a bit concerned at the moment, we're just not really getting enough information. 98 houses, a lot of houses. I would like to have a good idea of what 98 houses would look like on that illustration in comparison to the other houses to the south. Taking into account that it's also outside the current boundary, again, 98 houses, a lot of the houses to be outside of that boundary.
Just to reinforce that, I think it's a reasonable point. Usually at outline stage, we do have some indication, so we get a sense of what the development might end up looking like, but we don't seem to have that on this case. In this case, is there an explanation for that?
Thanks, Chair. Applicants are not required to put in indicative drawings, and I do think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I know members have had outline applications through them with indicative drawings, and then we've got distracted into talking about the indicative drawings. So I would just say that it is up to 98 dwellings, and it is difficult to kind of envisage that, but the reserved matters will clearly deal with all of that, and we can't deal with that at this stage. And if I might, Chair, just to preempt something else, I think it's worth mentioning at this stage that members often call for the reserved matters to be returned back to committee for discussion. We are just on the verge of new legislation which allows the Secretary of State to draft a national scheme of delegation. And my professional view, not knowing what the legislation says specifically, but my advice to you is that that might not necessarily be something that can happen when the national scheme of delegation comes out, which I think is September sort of time. It might be that reserved matters are a matter for delegation, and that there would not be a way of calling that in. So just to preempt that discussion if possible.
Okay, well,
Can I just come in, Chair, and say
yes.
there is an indicative layout that was shown in the design and access statement that's on the council's website. So there was something there. It's just not in the presentation.
Thank you for that, and presumably that also gives officers reassurance that the scale of the site and the number of houses being proposed is realistic.
Yes, Chair. Simple answer. If we didn't think the site could accommodate it, if there was no chance, then we'd be recommending refusal.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Mr. Ebbs.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to sort of outline my thinking. As officers have denoted, we are today simply discussing the principle of development and access. I would like to sort of say, obviously with a tilted balance, we have to take into account the number of houses that we need to match. It does concern me because the scale of development in proportion to the town, it's a question of, is it overdevelopment within a very short period of time? Would it change the culture or the community of the town? Would this have a significant impact? Is it sustainable? Don't know at this stage, because obviously this is just an outline application with further detail required in future. So I suppose where I'm pivoting is the principle of development. Potentially, I think we need to really discuss in great depth the question of drainage, the question of sustainable amenities, which potentially this development could provide in future. These are things we could discuss in detail. I don't think we've fleshed out the discussion of access enough. As it stands, I think the access location is probably sufficient, but potentially members might want to discuss a bit more if they have any concerns about whether there's appropriate visibility on the access point, whether that is the best location. Obviously, there's two accesses. There's the road, and then there's the pedestrian area, which we visited in the site visit, which is potentially up for discussion today, is it not, as well? How it joins to neighbouring properties.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a few comments from the chair. So first of all, I think we've established that drainage is not something that we can dig into at this stage, that would be at the full application stage. We have a countryside site outside the development boundary, but we have a tilted balance, and therefore, as I understand it, what we have to consider is whether this is a sustainable site, despite it not being in the development boundary, number one, and number two, are there any negative impacts which would mitigate against acting on using the tilted balance to approve. I'm struggling to find the negatives in terms of the site. There's nothing in terms of history or landscaping or anything like that that would have a major negative impact. So to me, the question then becomes: is this sustainable given the scale of Bowmere Heath and given its access to Shrewsbury? And again, I'm struggling to find reasons why it's not sustainable. Bowmere Heath is already, a hub and has, a degree of services in the town, as we saw when we came through, and it has access to Shrewsbury, which is, fair. So I am struggling to find reasons to. So I'd be interested if any members do think that there are reasons for us to judge this as not a sustainable site. I think that's what we have to come down on. Is there reasons to say this is not sustainable, and are there any negative impacts from this development that perhaps we haven't identified yet that we would have to take into account? Are there any other members who wish to speak? No.
Squishing Chair, too close. Thanks, Chair. Just to remind members of the report at 6.6.2, which covers the drainage. There's not an objection to that from our drainage team, subject to a condition, which means that they will need to demonstrate a betterment. So the situation with existing greenfield surface water will have to be better than it is now in order for us to approve the development under that condition. So it is in the report, as I said, at 6.6.2. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, that's welcome. Yes.
Councillor Marco, I concur with what the Chair has said previously. While sympathising with the increase in population, and I can understand the trepidation with that. One possibility you want to think about as well on a plus side is the increased population providing more funding, money, custom for the traditional pub, the shop, and everything else, the amenities that are already there. I do understand the trepidation at the increased size, but I too am struggling to understand the necessary negatives which would get us around the problem with the tilted balance.
Thank you. I just wanted to point one other point just in response to the speakers. Actually, I absolutely appreciate the fear of yet more development that may come after this. I think we all do, but unfortunately we can't take, we have to make a decision based on the application in front of us, and that doesn't include those rumoured extras. So whilst we appreciate the point, it's not something we can really take into account. I saw a hand and I've forgotten whose it was. Yes, Councillor, yeah, and then Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I concur with many of the points which you've raised. As it stands, I cannot see enough arguments which would outweigh the tilted balance and make this development unsustainable. I do completely appreciate the comments by the public about overdevelopment, but I think there will be a significant amount of SIL money which is allocated as part of this development, and there will be a discussion to be had at detail stage to try and improve the development with concerns on drainage and others. This is something which will be discussed further down. Therefore, I would be prepared to put a motion to approve, to vote in favour of this, and I'll potentially make this a motion to approve this application for outline stage, obviously with the intent of discussing in greater detail this application in detail stage at a later date.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Rownley and Councillor Davis. I'll just see if there's. I'll take you two first, and then we'll see if there's a seconder. Councillor Rownley.
Councillor Rownley, just going back to the drainage, and Councillor Davis. The drainage concerns, we're not too worried about the surface water drainage, which is what refers to as.
They're refusing below the Brook Road culverts, and that's been an issue for Beaumont Heath for many years, and when they actually built other developments. And so WSP have requested that a detailed analysis is done of that to see whether it's suitable. Am I right there? I think that's what I was asking for. But at the moment, they're refusing to undertake that assessment. If they'd agreed to take that assessment and the assessment had been carried out, then I'd be more tempted to say, well, actually, it is viable. But until that assessment is carried out, so you know the impact is going to be lower down, below that development site, where land is dropping away, until that assessment is carried out, I don't know whether it's a viable and sustainable site. and I'm concerned of the impact on the other residents there as well.
We get some clarification on it.
Can I just
Yes.
remind it, it's a bit like building control issues, that they're hurdles that the applicant will have to overcome at the next stage. So just because we think a site might not be compliant with certain rules, that's for the applicant to show they're compliant with the rules. And that's the point that the case officer's been making here, that whilst we are, you're raising points about drainage, they have to still overcome that hurdle. We're not saying you've got a free card to go. We're saying, okay, at this stage, our recommendation is you can move forward to the next spot, but at the next spot, there's still going to be lots of questions for you to answer and provide the evidence on.
Sure, I just read it per se as it was online on the screen, and to me, the very final sentence basically meant that's the end of it. That's our situation. We're not engaging anymore. That's the way I've interpreted that letter. I might be wrong. Welcome your interpretation.
Just refer you to appendix 2 in the agenda, and with the conditions. If you look at condition 16, it does talk about drainage. That is specifically for the site. If you're talking about surface water drainage as well, councillors, we need to have a layout. We need to know the number of houses, because that will all have an impact on surface water drainage. Now, without that, they can't produce a report to say this is the flow rates off this site. So that all needs to be bottomed out, and that's not part of this outline application.
Okay, thank you. So just to draw members' attention, then number 16, condition 16, concurrently with the reserved matters application for the layout of the site, a scheme of surface and foul water drainage shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. So there has to be a scheme which is approvable. And we have a proposal. Yes, I think we've taken all the speakers. We had a proposal from Councillor Ebbs. Is there we have a seconder for that proposal? We do, from Councillor Rosemary Dartnell. Okay, do we have any other speakers? In which case I shall put that proposal to a vote. Yes.
Can't you see the proposal again?
Of course you can. Councillor Ebbs.
The proposal is to approve the application in the outline stage, obviously with committee coming back to this at a further detail stage to discuss the detail of the application.
So just to come back to the officer's points about that, we can certainly ask that it comes back to us. We may get overruled by the government, apparently. Okay, so given that we're all aware of that, I have that proposal. I have a seconder. Did I say yes? Councillor Dartnell was the seconder. So we're going to put that to the vote, please.
Okay, so the proposal is to approve the planning application subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report, and in the hope that it can come back to committee at a later stage in respect of the matters. Okay, so we take a vote. If you can state whether you accept, refusal, abstain. So Thomas Clayton.
For.
Andy Davis.
Against.
Rosemary Dartnell. For. Gregory Ebbs.
For.
Adam Pfeiffer.
Against.
Mark Owen.
For.
Wendy Owen. For. Paul Rowley.
For.
Gina Dean.
For. Okay, so that's been approved by the committee. Thank you very much. We will take a 5-minute breather and reconvene at 3:30, please. public who are here regarding the Ellesmere Road application. So we're going to move to item 8, proposed residential development land on the west side of Ellesmere Road, Shrewsbury. And I'll hand over to the officers.
Thank you, Chair. So just ahead of delving into the presentation, just a reminder that the legal advice letter, which is noted to item 5 on the additional reps, is actually in regards to this application. As to the presentation for this outline application, I intend on keeping it very brief, as it is coming back to committee following February's deferral. I'll just quickly run through some slides just to remind members. So the site is to the north of Shrewsbury. The reordering has thrown me. Sites north of Shrewsbury, the proposal is for 450 dwellings, ranging from 2 to 5 beds, 10% affordable housing, a local centre measuring 0.25 hectares, vehicle, pedestrian, cycle provisions, green infrastructure, including play areas and landscaping. The illustrative master plan that was submitted shows that the development will be delivered across 2 phases. Phase 1 will be 150 dwellings, and phase 2 will be the remainder, 300. Reminder, submitted an outline with access. So similar to the previous application, all of the matters in regards to scale, design, landscaping and layout will be dealt with at reserved matters stage. The item was previously deferred by members on the basis of 2 reasons: to seek further assurances that the impacts on the wider highway network have been taken into account and that further information be provided in relation to the A49, the gyratory and impact on the Chester Street and Castle Foregate loop. And number 2, to understand the travel options and seek further assurances that there are going to be appropriate levels of active travel routes beyond the site, in particular to educational facilities to the north and into the existing cycle network to the south. So you'll have noticed on the file that the applicant has provided 2 technical notes directly in response to those points of deferral. The plan on screen just shows the walking distances to surrounding facilities and services within proximity to the site. This was shown previously, but just for a reminder, we can see a range of services, including transport, retail, and then just general service and educational, and also playground and pharmacy and GP surgeries and the like. And this plan, this plan is lifted from the technical note, so it does slightly differ in terms of how it's been displayed, but it shows the same level of information in terms of where the vehicle connections will be, and also the pedestrian and cycle provisions, along with local bus routes and cycleway and footways within the surrounding areas that will connect into the site. You'll notice my addendum is heavily reliant on the Local Highways Authority briefing note, so I'm going to now pass over to Gemma, who will update members, do a quick summary.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity really to reflect on the fact that from a highways point of view, it's acknowledged that it's a challenging application. The original application was submitted in 2022 with an assessment of the phase 1, 150 dwellings. However, the application that we had before us was for the 450 dwellings outline permission. So it's important to sort of make an assessment on that full 450 as outlined. As the application has been sort of determined, there's been obviously the application for the North West Relief Road, and there was original guidelines on the local plan submission to say that this site would not be forthcoming until North West Relief Road was operational. But as I say, there was a need to determine the application based on the North West Relief Road not coming forward, and determine whether there would be an acceptability for the full 450 rather than the just 150 that was originally submitted. In terms of the additional modelling that was done, it was the applicant actually used the Shrewsbury model, so from Shropshire Council. So the input from the data is actually from the Shrewsbury model that was the same from the North West Relief Road. And then they've gone through a series of assessments in terms of looking at the key junctions, which were scoped out originally to make an assessment about the likely impact of the full 450 on those key junctions. And as Ollie said, in response to the concerns raised at the February committee, the applicant's consultant has submitted 2 technical notes. One, look at doing a summary of the likely highway impact, and then the active travel as well. So just touching on the active travel and the contributions that the applicant is willing to secure through the Section 106, the active travel contribution will be £5,000 per dwelling in terms of the 106 agreement. So I think within the officer report and some of the correspondence, it was up to 5,000, but it's been agreed that that would be the £5,000 per dwelling that would come forward, and we'll, through the 106 negotiations, we will look at the various different trigger points and what would be appropriate at an officer level to do that. There's also a travel plan contribution and passenger transport as well. And the planning condition attached to any permission granted will require the applicant to construct the Toucan crossing prior to the occupation of the 50th dwelling. But I'm happy to take any questions that members may have in relation to the highways impact.
Can I just make one further point of clarification? Because this item has already been to committee and was deferred on those 2 reasons listed out earlier, the scope of debate is limited to those issues. The matters surrounding principle have already been dealt with at the previous planning committee.
Thank you for that. We do have speakers first. We do have speakers. Yep. So our first speaker is Ken Simpson. Right hand button, please, Ken, and then you'll have 3 minutes from when you begin speaking.
My name is Ken Simpson, and I've lived on the Ellesmere Road now for 50 years. I'd like you to consider a few numbers. 450 dwellings will equal about maybe 600 vehicles. Out of those 600 vehicles, about 120 of them will be wanting to go into Shrewsbury to get to work or go beyond Shrewsbury to work. Then on top of that, there will be another 60 vehicles that will want to take their children to school from this development. In addition to that, in about 5 years' time, there'll be a further 70 vehicles joining the queue that want to get into work. That will, in fact, increase the total number of vehicles to 250. If each one of those vehicles is about 20 foot long in a traffic jam, you've got a mile-long jam up the Ellesmere Road, which takes you beyond Hencote Lane. And if you would then add in the other 313 houses that are going to be built, it goes well past that, up to Mount Pleasant Road. Let's think about the impact. The poor driver will be wondering how they get into work and wondering why the planners had accepted this plan to cause them even more hassle. You're also thinking about the poor people that have bought properties who find themselves in a queue to get into the jam, to get into town. You then think about the school children going to school in the fumes, and some of them will get asthma. And then you also add into that the very fact that they are walking on narrow pavements, and if they step off, they could get hurt. And then finally, the emergency services. I would hate to be in an ambulance at the back end of that queue having a heart attack. And I therefore do believe that this development will end up with people dying in ambulances that shouldn't. Let's move on to another point. And that is, in fact, the position that the planners have with all their information. On record, you have a letter from Freeth, the solicitors, in which it references about 20 paragraphs within some of your sections of your planning procedures that are there to save the countryside. Those references are there for a specific reason. And they are there to make sure that the countryside is preserved. And so far, we've not had a reply to that letter, which must mean Freeths are probably correct. And therefore, if a legal challenge was presented, then in actual fact, this application would get rejected. Finally, my conclusion, those people that have the right to vote this off, we'll be heroes. There'll be heroes to those people that are trying to get into town. There'll be heroes to those people that haven't bought properties and don't get stuck in jams. There'll be heroes to the school children that don't get asthma and also are able to won't walk along narrow pavements and get knocked. There'll be heroes to those people that don't die in ambulances. And finally, there'll be heroes to the future generations that will be able to enjoy the countryside, which the rules and regulations you have in place should stop this happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any points of clarification?
I have to stay here.
No? Okay. Thank you very much.
No, that's not good, is it?
Anything from officers at this stage? It's all right, because we've got another speaker. No, okay. Councillor Ben Jeffcott. You have 5 minutes from when you begin.
Right, thanks very much. As you know, I'm not happy about this plan, and with the greatest respect to our officer team, I was at the previous committee 2 months ago. I do not think we have done enough to build in an alternative to the Northwest Road condition that this council set some years ago as a condition before the full application should be granted. I do think we should respectfully ask the officers to have regard to the fears among residents and amongst members of this committee that we have not got this right. We do surely need a new transport assessment that takes account of this development, the impact it will have, and the additional developments which have been approved but not yet built, and also the already ongoing diversion of traffic from the St Michael's Street artery over to Ellesmere Road and Coton Hill because of the effect of the gyratory. All of those things have happened and have not been taken account of, with the greatest respect, by PJD's transport assessment. The hybrid model predates the situation we're in now. Residents along Ellesmere Road are clear that traffic has increased considerably in recent weeks and months. Just 2 or 3 days ago, when Severn Trent were doing some work at the Mount Pleasant Road junction and slightly mistimed the traffic lights, and we had 40-minute delays in each direction, and that is gridlock. Just imagine that type of situation, plus additional traffic from 450 houses, plus 313 houses or flats or the nursing home, whatever, at Hencote, all of that added to the same piece of tarmac, the same road. Highways have not come back with the assurances that I think this committee rightly asked for. So with greatest respect to the applicants who have served a legal notice, sort of a saber rattling exercise, I regret, I think it's too early for that type of saber rattling to interrupt the deliberations of this council. As Charlie has said, this might be the last time that members have a chance to shape this development if it comes back under delegated powers and just goes to officers once the government changes legislation. So we need to exercise the power we've got while we still have the chance. The reports are also still full of misleading and inaccurate claims about bus services on Ellesmere Road. I've complained about this before, but we still see it. If, for instance, I quote from the report, existing bus stops along Ellesmere Road are within 400 metres of proposed dwellings and offer frequent services to Shrewsbury Town Centre and Ellesmere. Those frequent services are 5 buses a day. No one can build their life around that. You need, if you're going to try and get people out of their cars and into buses, you need to have buses that turn up more regularly than that. 5 times a day is a nonsense. The applicant is offering to spend money on transport, but they're talking about bus stop poles or bus shelters or real-time information systems for £6,000 each. Why do I need a real-time information system to tell me there are only 5 buses a day? We actually need a mechanism to produce more buses, so therefore we can actually accommodate the scale of development that is being thrust upon us. One further concern, which I know wasn't in the notes, it wasn't in the resolution taken by the last committee, but affordability, 10% isn't enough. It really should be 20% as at a minimum. This is a very significant development coming at a time of enormous public concern across North Shrewsbury about the delays in our major road network, as it is now, not necessarily even more so if we allow all these plans to go through. If you're minded to approve at the absolute minimum, I suggest the following conditions are set. 1, an access-only weight restriction to keep through lorries off Ellesmere Road. Since the gyratory was implemented, lorries have been going through. There used to be bans. Secondly, Hubert Way, we need a mini roundabout or a midi roundabout at that junction, and we need works at Mount Pleasant Road Junction, either a mini roundabout or an engineered roundabout or traffic signals or something, and LTN 120 standards throughout the development, which I don't think is there at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for clarification? Yes, Councillor Hopes.
Thank you very much, Ben. What are the times of the buses, just for understanding?
Roughly every 2 hours through the day, 5 northbound, 5 southbound. 2 of them dive into the Herongate down Hubert Way, but and there's nothing on Sundays.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks.
We now have the agents for the transport consultant. This is, I believe, a 2-header. Sarah Butterfield and Steve Bates. Thank you. So you still have just 3 minutes, I'm afraid, combined from when you begin. Press the right hand button. Yeah.
Thank you. Following the resolution of members to defer this application at the February committee, the applicant has now worked with planning and highways officers to provide detailed additional information which addresses the 2 reasons for deferral. A further technical note confirms the methodology that was agreed with the Highways Authority and employed in the modelling work undertaken. The work used outputs from the Council's own strategic traffic model and considered impacts up to and including an assessment year of 2042. Work undertaken also includes scenarios with and without the North West Relief Road. The junctions assessed included the junction access to the A49 from the A5124 to the north and to the south down to the town centre, including the gyratory. The assessment considered the impact of the development in traffic flow terms, and this was used to agree which of these junctions would require standalone capacity modelling. The work was corroborated by the Highways Authority, and it is being concluded that the development has a minimal impact on forecast levels of queuing and delay, both with and without the North West Relief Road. There is no objection on the Highways grounds to the Highways impacts of the proposed development. The additional work undertaken has also considered the Shrewsbury Movement and Public Space Strategy, and having reviewed the proposed ambitions of the strategy, it can be concluded that the proposed development would not prejudice that strategy being delivered. The strategy includes ambitions which focus upon improving pedestrian connectivity to and within the town centre, upgrades to local cycling and walking infrastructure, and to enhance public transport. All such matters are actively proposed within this application, and there is no conflict with that strategy or its ability to be delivered. The applicant has undertaken detailed work to identify active travel routes to which any planning obligation could be directed, which would improve routes to education facilities to the north and into the existing cycle network to the south. A technical note on active travel was prepared and submitted and is referenced in your officer report. The application includes proposals to improve footway links in the vicinity of the site, including between the two site access points and a new toucan crossing on Ellesmere Road, linking the site with the existing residential estate and active travel infrastructure further to the east. The applicant also proposes a contribution toward active travel in the area. This would enable enhancements to the existing routes identified in the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan and referred to in the active travel note. The officer report confirms that the provision of contributions towards active travel is acceptable, and work has now identified the schemes on which the contributions can be utilised. The work undertaken has addressed those matters raised by members. It's been discussed and agreed with officers, and the positive conclusion of the officer's report remains unchanged. There are no harms arising from the development that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and planning permission should be granted. We would ask you to support this proposal. Just to say now, Mr. Steve Bates, who sat next to me, is here if there is any highways clarifications. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from committee members? Oh, yeah, go on.
Thank you for that. You mentioned you're going to develop the cycle routes. Can you give some examples of your plans for that? Are you able to share those with us?
Yeah, so the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan is identified by the council. They have routes along Hubert Way, which include a segregated cycle route. There's also routes further north up Ellesmere Road, connecting to schools as well, and further to the south in terms of the town centre. So the design, whilst the designs haven't been proposed, they are identified within the local cycle and walking infrastructure plans, and the contribution will go towards those.
Go on.
Did you visit the sites yourself? So all these junctions, I've seen all the data. Thank you all for that. It's very interesting. Do you actually go and visit these sort of junctions at sort of peak periods yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. We undertake site visits, and we also run, in terms of the numbers and the traffic flows, they come from the strategic model that includes committed development, committed infrastructure, etc. So all of that is run, as is the case with any large application within Shrewsbury itself. I'm sure Gemma can allude to that further if necessary.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Officers, any comments at this stage before we open out? Okay. So committee members, just to remind ourselves that we are debating specifically highways network impacts just to remind you what the deferral was about, which was highways network impact and the assurances on active travel, and that this is an outline application. I see any hands? Councillor Dartnell.
Thank you. Can I ask Gemma, please, about so we have the LC WIP, the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. It's hard to say whether you say it whichever way you say it, isn't it? So there's two routes or three routes that would relate to this development. I think S22, 20, possibly 62 as well. What I would worry about is, having had an awful lot of development in my own previous division, I would worry that the council would have the facilities and the plans ready to put in good infrastructure for cycling and walking. I see what S22 is, widening the pavement and having segregated cycling and walking routes along Ellesmere Road, which is absolutely needed, very much needed along that road now without this development. So my question is really, it's a difficult one to answer, I realise that, but I'm expressing a concern and asking, do we think that we have the ability at the council to actually make that happen?
Yeah, so as previously outlined, within the LC WIP, there has been some infrastructure requirements, but I think as part of this Section 106 contribution, it provides an opportunity to do a full assessment of active travel and the corridor and then deliver schemes. So as we sit here today, we don't have a scheme ready to go, but there will be an assessment, on the basis, and the expectation will be that the contributions will partially fund that, may not completely, but they will partially fund and mitigate the impact and address the concerns with regard to kind of the active travel and the movement from the site. So.
Yes.
So the fact that we have the LC whip in place for that, I think it's 2 years old, isn't it? Does that not constitute a base plan? Obviously, it's not it's a route identified, isn't it? It's no more than that.
So yeah, it's a route identified, and effectively we have a active travel manager in post now, so he's doing a full assessment of all the kind of the LC whip, and to make an assessment with our sort of traffic engineering team to look at the kind of the larger picture in terms of, you know, what's committed sort of development within the area as well, and assess the needs with a view to kind of delivering the schemes. So
just a comment on that from me as chair, it's a bit like us washing, what is it, dirty washing in public or something. These are internal debates, and we've all had experience of active travel schemes which we hope to see developed, and they haven't come forward for one reason or another. We're aware that that's been an issue with the council, and that's possibly, you know, behind many of our concerns over some of these developments. But we also recognise that that's not really the developer's fault. Yes.
Just to confirm as well, with it being a Section 106 contribution, it has to have met the tests in terms of a direct impact of the development. So when we get to the drafting of the 106 stage, it will specifically detail as to which improvement scheme it will fund towards. So it's not just going to sit in a pot to fund any improvement. It will specifically reference the Ellesmere Road cycling schemes and others mentioned in the LC whip. So it's secured for those schemes.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
We've heard the concerns about the limited number of bus services along the Ellesmere Road. Earlier on, Gemma, you were talking about 5,000 allocation you're going to get per household, and you started talking about how that could be used for the bus services. Am I right? Could we actually determine that some of that money does actually go to improve the bus services?
Yes.
There's a way of guaranteeing that.
Apologies. Yeah. So just to clarify, the 5,000 was with regard to the active travel. There's a separate contribution for the passenger transport, which has sort of been alluded to, that it's per dwelling, but then within the kind of overall kind of strategy, it's been identified that there will be need to be infrastructure within the site. So there's further contributions to be secured to ensure that there's the bus stops and you know, sort of real-time information displayed. So it's been identified by the passenger transport team that when we get these contributions, it's not just to provide the bus service, it is actually that we need to secure further contributions to make sure that we've got that supporting infrastructure in place as well. So as part of this development, sorry, I wrote it down, it's 1,100 per dwelling, 250 per dwelling, and then additional ones on top. It's outlined within the officer report 664. Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you. I appreciate infrastructure is very important, but we do need the buses running along the road as well, don't we, to use infrastructure? So there's no guarantee we can increase.
I was just going to say that I think as part of Shropshire Council's kind of overall strategy in terms of the passenger transport side, then it would be envisaged really that it would go towards the on-demand. So, you know, we've got an evolving policy with regard to that and extending the zone. So the expectation really would be that we'd be moving towards an on-demand service, and that the contributions would be, you know, to help to kind of support that really. So.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Radley.
Councillor Radley. At the last time this committee, obviously we were concerned about a number of junctions and traffic impact with the cancellation of North West Relief Road. The new surveys have been done. Are they actual new surveys with new data, or are those surveys being done on existing data? And secondly, I've been looking through, you know, the emails and some of the information. Whilst it's accepted that, you know, 450 dwellings can be built without having the North West Relief Road in place, none of the information points to the North West Relief Road being actually cancelled. So we say, you know, the 450 dwellings can be approved prior to the construction and prior to the opening of the North West Relief Road having a significant impact, and we also, the 150 could have been accommodate prior to the construction of proposed Northwest Relief Road. None of the information in that says now that the Northwest Relief Road has been cancelled. The Northwest Relief Road is gone. It's not happening. And that is where my concern, and I've said this from the start, I said it at the last planning meeting, you know, the administration has taken the decision to cancel the Northwest Relief Road. And I'm not happy to put my name on Shrewsbury coming to a standstill because of that. If the planning inspectorate wants to do it, fine. But I'm not putting my name on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify a couple of points. So I think there was a question about whether this was new surveys, new data. So the technical notes and any updates on the officer report is just outlining the assessments that have been done as part of the consideration for the application. I think, as I previously outlined, originally the assessment was done on 150, but this application was seeking for approval for the full 450, so an assessment was done on that basis. In terms of Northwest Relief Road, there was, like I touched on before, there was a need to determine this application, and there was an uncertainty at the time in terms of like Northwest Relief Road coming forward. So the applicant sought to demonstrate that actually, whilst we had the guidelines on this site, that it could come forward without Northwest Relief Road, and they've, through modelling, as sort of demonstrated that. So from a highways point of view, we've identified the key junctions, they did the modelling, and then they've done further assessments on the key junctions, and we're satisfied from a highways point of view that actually Northwest Relief Road, the development can come forward without Northwest Relief Road in this case.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? Yes. Right.
I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here whereby we are coming across dwellings when it's 100, 150, and it does feel like a bit like death by a thousand cuts, where every time there's development of medium size, let's say, there is increased traffic, but we chuck up to 4 or 5% increase in traffic. I do feel like 450 in its location is quite significant. This is not death by a thousand cuts. This will make a massive impact. And I do believe I may be wrong here, but when it comes to traffic, it is exponential. The more traffic you add to an area, the more time exponentially it will take for traffic to travel through. And this is why I feel with the evidence that's provided here, the information, even if you start adding bike paths, regular walking paths, it does feel a little bit like all the information does not add up to give a clear, concise impact to be able to substantiate basically a good answer on what the end impact would be for residents in the local area.
Has somebody indicated? No? Andrew? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, there was a couple of points that Councillor Jeffcott made regarding restricting HGVs through certain areas. Is that something that can be mentioned at this stage to go forward in future as part of the sort of looking into improving the idea of traffic if you've not got the HGVs and things going down there? I don't know whether that's the right time to.
That's helpful, thank you.
So there's two elements to it. There's a construction management plan, which would typically generate larger HGV vehicles, which we would the expectation would be that there would be a routing agreement and agreed route, and that wouldn't go through the Shrewsbury Town Centre. So there's that element of it. And then also from a full development perspective, there's kind of assumptions made about the percentage of HGVs that would be generated by the development, and that is going to be relatively low in terms of the fact that we're dealing with the residential. There is a local centre, but again, that would be a minimal impact really on the town centre. So I think as part of this development, we wouldn't be seeking to restrict kind of HGVs or introduce kind of further measures as a result of this development, whether as a wider strategy for town centre, it would need to be looked at, but obviously any restriction would be subject to kind of access to the town centre in terms of deliveries anyway. So, and sorry, I think that's probably key to point out as well that there is already a kind of restriction because of the railway sort of bridge as well. So there is that element of it that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Regarding Councillor Jeff Coxwell, the roundabout in Hubert Way. That's one junction which I knew very well over many years, and even now it's very congested. Is the feasibility of doing some work on that junction to alleviate the traffic hold up feasible?
So in terms of the Hubert Way junction, it has been assessed, and clearly because of its proximity, closeness to the site, there is going to be an impact on it, but further assessment's been done that indicates that actually it's not going to be overcapacity as a result of the development. So from that point of view, we wouldn't be seeking any kind of mitigation.
It's not going to get much better, worse, but it won't get much better either.
There will be an impact, but that impact is not so severe that we would then be asking for contributions.
Okay. I'll just make a comment myself. As actually as a resident on Ellesmere Road, I absolutely appreciate the fear around the impact of this. My difficulty is how far I can make a judgment that is different to the one that the Highways Department have accepted in terms of the impact of these homes. It's, you know, I would need to see evidence that the impact assessments previously have got it wrong. And I'm not, you know, I just wonder if you've got any comments on previous impact assessments and whether we do post impact assessing to see whether we've got it right in terms of those measurements.
Mic on.
Sorry, no, we can't take comments from the floor. Sorry. That's why we have the whole application process. There's opportunities to put in applications and to speak, and we determine the speakers before the meeting. I apologise, but we can't take last minute speakers.
So as part of the travel plan and outlined within the updated sort of officer report, it just make reference to the fact that there will be a requirement for annual surveys up to a period of 10 years following the first occupation, and that there is a travel plan monitoring contribution which would provide an opportunity for that assessment in terms of the impact of the development.
Which would be too late to do anything about it, of course, but it would be, yes. And is that common practice?
So the travel plan contribution, and then there'd be certain sort of triggers within that and targets to be met. And if they don't meet those targets, then they would need to implement further measures to reduce the impact of the development. Okay. So I think the annual surveys do provide an opportunity for that monitoring, which we don't always have on every site, but there will be an opportunity there to kind of monitor that travel behaviour.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out a few things. So just to remind members that this was a former draft allocation, so it has been through a whole site selection and assessment process where the achievable, viable and deliverable based on the proposed number of dwellings at the upper 450, albeit with a requirement the Northwest Relief Road was delivered prior to 150. However, the transport assessment has confirmed that 450 can be delivered without the Northwest Relief Road. And I've been listening to the debate, and I think I just need to remind members of what paragraph 116 of the MPPF says. We acknowledge there will be an impact. I've heard words such to the effect of significant and so on. However, the test is clear. It has to be severe. I've not heard any member suggest it would be a severe impact on the local network. And if we can't get to a point where we're of the judgment that it would be a severe impact, then we cannot refuse on highway grounds.
You members, we're going to need a proposal at some stage. Okay, as chair, I'll take it because we have an officer proposal which is to accept. So I will propose that to see if there is a seconder at this stage. Yeah, we have a second. We have several seconders. I'll take Councillor Dartmouth, put her hand up first. Okay. So we have a proposal on the table which is to accept the officer recommendation. Okay, we'll put that to the vote, please.
Yes, the proposal is to accept the officer's recommendation. If you could confirm if you're for, against, or wish to abstain. Thomas Clayton.
For.
Andy Davis.
For.
Rosemary Dartnell. For. Gregory Evans.
For.
Adam Faither.
Against.
Mark Owen.
For.
Wendy Owen. For. Paul Rowley.
Against.
Julian Dean.
For. So that's 7 for and 2 against. So that is accepted. So that's been approved. So we'll just take a 2-minute break for anybody to leave if they wish to, and then we'll take the last application. Hey, yeah, if you're quick. Staff's getting in a minute. Right. Just waiting for one councillor to return and then we will continue. Okay, okay, folks. So thank you for your patience, especially those speakers on this last item. So we're now moving. We've started. We're now moving to the final item, the final application, I beg your pardon, which is item 8, proposed resident. No, item 7, Foxholes Farm Poultry Unit, Little Ness, Shrewsbury, Shropshire. Over to officers, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the erection of 2 additional poultry houses with associated feed bins, hard standings and relocated access road, associated with a reduction in stocking density across the whole poultry farm, moving towards a new higher welfare standard. I'll draw your attention to the a late representation that was received and the case officer's response to that. And I'm assuming that members have had the opportunity to read those. Just one further thing. The conditions, condition 10 refers to a limit on the occupation of number of birds. If members are minded to grant planning permission, it's recommended that there's an insertion of no more than to that figure of 445,500 birds. So the application has been brought to committee because it's an environmental impact assessment development from Schedule 1 of the regulations. The site location here, you can see the existing 8 sheds in the centre of the plan, a countryside location with the applicant's anaerobic digester plant to the west, and you can see the network of public rights of way in green dotted lines, and the nearest residential dwellings to the east, Milford House and Little Ness Village to the south. This is the application boundary, which encompasses the whole of the existing 8 sheds and the proposed 2 new ones, which I'll show on a later plan. These are the existing 8 sheds arranged in a parallel row, and the next slide it shows the position of the 2 additional sheds in line with the existing ones, with the associated elements of the proposal, which are a slurry lagoon to the east and also attenuation pond to the south and a new pond to the west of that. And you could see just the let's say the more detail of the anaerobic digestion plant to the west as well. As part of the proposed plans, the existing access road you can see will just be relocated to the eastern side of the new sheds, shown in dark grey there. Can I have the next slide, please? This is the proposed elevations of the additional sheds, which would be in line with the existing permitted ones, and the feed bins as well. So this is a photograph of the existing ones. The new ones will be at the western side of this. This is like looking from the northwest side of the site, and the proposed ones will be at the western side, the left-hand side of this plan. This is the position where the proposed new sheds would be. You can see the existing access road leading towards the site. That will be relocated to the right-hand side of this picture to provide space for the existing the new sheds. This is a photograph from the applicant's landscape appraisal, which is taken from the nearest public right of way, to see how the sheds sit down in the landscape, and there's the soft landscaping around them as well, that is the grassland, which helps to limit the wider visibility of the existing sheds, and the new ones will be on the left-hand side of these ones. This is a photograph from the edge of Little Ness village, from the parish church, looking directly towards the sheds, and again you can see that they sit down well within the landscape. This is a photograph from the southeastern side, looking towards one of the nearest dwellings, and you can see just to the right of the house the anaerobic digestive plant, and then to the right hand side of that is where the existing sheds are. And then this is the view from the entrance road from the public highway. Again, you can see the limited relative scale of the sheds in relation to the surrounding landscape. So just to summarise the application, the main driver of it is a proposed reduction in the density that the birds will be housed at within the buildings. All of the sheds would have a lower density, including the 2 additional ones, to meet a higher welfare standard. This would result in a reduction in the number of birds at the site with 2 additional buildings. Other than some comments from the council's landscape consultant, there are no concerns raised by technical consultees. The poultry operation would continue largely in line with the existing established management practice. The application has been assessed under habitat regulations, and the details of that are included in the appendix to the committee report, confirming that it wouldn't have no adverse effect on any internationally designated ecological site. And to summarise, the recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement to secure biodiversity net gain and to continue existing controls over HGV routing matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have 2 speakers. The first speaker is Alison Cuffin. Is that correct? Alison, you have 3 minutes from when you begin. The right-hand button will get your microphone on.
Good afternoon. I'm Alison Caffin, a Shropshire resident, researcher and former academic. I've spent the last 10 years researching the growth and impacts of the UK poultry industry, including a PhD on the subject. I've been researching and campaigning about the pollution caused by intensive poultry units out of a genuine desire to address the impacts of the industry, which has grown massively in Shropshire. The county now has more poultry than any other local authority area in Great Britain. This application is the first of over 12 poultry projects which are currently in the pipeline for your planning committee. I imagine they've brought you this one first because it is framed as an improvement in animal welfare and does not, at the moment, propose additional numbers of birds. This tactic of framing the development as a welfare improvement seems to be an approach the UK poultry industry is currently taking in several areas. This is because the courts have picked up on the many pollution impacts and the various grey areas in planning and regulation that the poultry industry had previously been relying on. The industry is now using animal welfare as an argument for expansion. UK welfare schemes, such as the Better Chicken Commitment, have only been implemented by a few high-end retailers. Recently, many corporations, such as KFC, Nando's and Burger King, have withdrawn from the scheme. In a few years' time, the owners of this poultry unit may turn around and say the welfare schemes have collapsed altogether and they need to return to higher bird stocking densities. Would the council reject an application to increase the number of birds if there are already 2 sheds built there already? Indeed, how would the council know whether more birds were being housed if the owners did not choose to notify them? Some other poultry producers have reduced stocking densities without building huge new sheds. If you as a committee choose to approve this application, you need to be sure that any conditions are enforceable and will not, in 5 or 10 years' time, allow another 100,000 additional birds to pollute this part of Shropshire via a backdoor route. There have been irregularities at this site in the past, and the applicants have not provided all the requested information with the current application. Can they be trusted to comply with planning conditions for the next 40 years? You would need a cast iron condition which can be monitored and enforced. I feel rather exposed being the sole person objecting to this proposal, but I'm doing it because I believe Shropshire Council needs to develop supplementary guidance which will help you as a committee deal with such applications. And these applications are going to keep on coming until you do have better policies. I'm asking you to reject or at least defer a decision on this application until a more strategic approach to industrial livestock operations has been developed for Shropshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification, members? No? Okay, thank you. Our second speaker is Ian Pick, the agent. Ian, you also have 3 minutes and you press the right hand button.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Ian Pick and I speak in support of this application for 2 additional poultry houses at Foxhills Farm. I want to be clear about what this application actually is. It's not an expansion of production. This is a welfare improvement. By adding 2 new sheds, we can permanently reduce the stocking density across the entire farm from the current 38 kilograms per square metre down to 30, a meaningful step up in the welfare standard. The total number of birds on site will actually fall by 4,500 from the current levels. Fewer birds, more space, better welfare. That's the purpose of this application. The officer's report recommends approval, and having read it carefully, I believe the recommendation is well founded and well evidenced. On environment and ecology, the independent ammonia modelling shows that the emissions will reduce at every sensitive receptor assessed, including Fenimere and Hencombe Pool Ramsar sites. The Habitat Regulations assessment concludes there will be no adverse effect either on internationally designated sites. The proposal delivers over 10% net biodiversity net gain secured by 30 years through a Section 106 agreement. On manure management, I know this has been raised as a concern. I want to address it directly. Because bird numbers are reducing, manure production will actually decrease from approximately 5,000 tonnes down to 4,800 tonnes.
All of the manure on site is processed through an on-farm anaerobic digester, which is separately regulated by the Environment Agency under its own environmental permit. The digester it produced is then applied to the applicant's own farmland just once per year using precision GPS control technology to prevent over-application in full compliance with the farming rules for water. The Environment Agency has reviewed all of this and raises no objection. Far from being a pollution risk, this is a closed-loop system that offsets the need for artificial fertilisers and environmental benefit. On traffic, vehicle movements will decrease. The highways officer has raised no objection, and HGV routing will continue to be controlled through Section 106 agreement. On noise and odour, the independent assessments conclude there will be no material difference from the existing operation. The Environment Agency are aware of no substantiated complaints, past or present. Parish Council of Little Ness supports this application. They recognise what it delivers: fewer birds, higher welfare, no additional traffic, controlled emissions and the protection of local employment. This is an established, well-run agricultural business investing to meet higher welfare standards voluntarily ahead of any legal requirement to do so. It safeguards 3 full-time jobs and supports the rural economy of Shropshire. The officer report concludes the proposal is in line with the development plan and national planning policy. I respectfully urge the committee to follow that recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any technical questions? Questions for clarification? Yes, Councillor Darnell.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Can I put a question to you from the previous speaker, really, or inferred from the previous speaker? What if you decided to repopulate those sheds? Thank you. That's the correct word. At the current level, for example.
So,
entitled to do that?
Well, the simple answer to the question is we couldn't without coming back to this committee to vary the condition. But the reason why the likes of KFC haven't abandoned it is the space. So basically the planning system at the moment is constraining space. So Shropshire haven't approved one of these for over a year. It's more than a year, 18 months, and we've got a space problem. So the rollout of the better chicken commitment in terms of the stocking density is being constrained by the planning system not processing the applications fast enough. But if we wanted to go back to 38 kilos, we would have to make a planning application, but it's unlikely because the entire industry is going to 30 kilos. I don't think there'll ever be any reversal of it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any comments from officers? This stage now. Okay, open it up to the committee. Yes, Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Is it stipulated within the actual conditions that the number of birds cannot increase, as we just heard?
There's a proposed condition that limits the maximum number of birds, and therefore, if they wanted to put more birds in, then they would have to vary that condition. They'd have to make an application to vary that condition.
That's enforceable then as well. Yes.
But if they are populating the sheds with more than is stipulated in the condition, and that's not adherent to the condition. So,
okay, thank you.
Mr. Ebbs.
Having heard from both speakers and the comments made by the officers, I'm inclined to vote in favour of this planning application with the added stipulation that they can have no more than the number of birds which was proposed. Because obviously the previous member of the public who spoke was requesting rock solid conditions to prohibit this. I feel that the insertion of this condition would satisfy both parties. I would be prepared to put that as a proposal from our side.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a second? That condition is already there. Okay, seconding, yeah. So we have seconded. Just so before we move that to the vote over, I just wanted to speak as well, and just to really speak directly to Alison. I don't think you should feel too isolated. The fact that it's only you, I'm sure you're speaking on behalf of many residents in Shropshire who are concerned at the growth of this industry and the impact it has. So I think it's very, brave of you and appropriate for you to have spoken. And your point about supplementary guidance, if your research has led you to some thoughts about what that might look like, then please do get in touch. I'd be very keen to see that and to bring that to the council's attention. But having said that, I think that we'll probably going to approve this, is my suspicion, given that we are looking at something which does offer a better welfare standard, and whilst absolutely take your point about the ability of Shropshire Council to enforce these things, our hands are probably tied on that, and we have to assume that we can. So based on that, I'm going to move it to a vote. Any other comments from the floor? No? Okay, so we'll move to a vote.
Okay, so the proposal is to accept the officer's recommendation to grant the planning permission. Please confirm if you wish to vote for, against, or to abstain. Thomas Clayton.
For.
Andy Davis.
For.
Rosebery Dartnell.
For.
Gregory Abbs.
For.
Adam Pfeiffer.
For.
Mark Owen.
For.
Wendy Owen.
For.
Cole Riley.
For.
Julian Dean.
For. Thank you, committee. That's all our applications dealt with. We now move on to appeals and appeal decisions. So, officers, anything you wish to draw to our attention? Let's do that one. Thank you very much. Yep.
Thanks, Chair. I think everybody's probably a bit tired by now, but I just want to impress that we do provide these appeal decisions at the end of the agenda so that members have got stuff to read. I only point out things that I think are relevant. The only one I would point out on this is there is a Gypsy and Traveller decision here, a bit of a cut out and keep, which you might want to file for later use, because there's a lot of really good advice in there about how we dealt with the tilted balance in the context of Gypsies and Travellers. Should the matter come before you, it would be useful. So please do read them.
Thank you for that. Okay, item 11, date of next meeting, Tuesday the 19th of May. And with that, I close the meeting. Thank you very much, officers, and thank you, members.